Now with this news video, we shift over to NXT as NXT Roadblock took place last night. And as it was the last branded special for NXT before WrestleMania weekend on April 1st and April 2nd, and also NXT Stand and Deliver, which is NXT's WrestleMania. We start with the first thing as Dragon Lee officially made his presence felt for the very first time on NXT programming, and not in the way most people thought, as most people expected Dragon Lee to be Grayson Waller's opponent. Because a lot of people saw it coming, a lot of people expected Grayson Waller to challenge Shawn Michaels to a match, and Shawn Michaels to say no and give Grayson Waller a different opponent. But most people expected that different opponent to be Dragon Lee, but Dragon Lee just appeared in the audience like they used to do back in the Black and Gold era. When they signed somebody new, they would have them appear in the audience and be introduced to the fans that way. But Grayson Waller's opponent, who was announced on the Grayson Waller Effect with Shawn Michaels, as he basically challenged Shawn to a match at Stand and Deliver because he blamed Shawn Michaels for him not being NXT World Champion. But the match was accepted by the former heart and soul of NXT, the former NXT World Champion, Johnny Wrestling. Johnny Gargano is back for one night on NXT, and as he said, he will end his run on NXT his way, and that is by defeating the man who took him out and ruined his last night in NXT, Grayson Waller. Grayson Waller beat down and jumped Johnny Gargano in his last match, or in his last night on NXT, and did not allow Johnny to end his run with NXT the way he wanted it to. Obviously, because, you don't want to end it. You don't want to end it by getting attacked. But either way, Johnny got a huge reaction last night and will get a huge reaction competing for the very first time in, probably almost 2 years on NXT. And in what will be one of the matches of the night, in my opinion, at Stand and Deliver against Grayson Waller. Braun Breaker also reappeared after his 6-man tag team match and a victory against Indu Sheer alongside the Creed brothers to challenge and make it official. Braun Breaker will fight for the very first time Carmelo Hayes at Stand and Deliver for the NXT World Championship. Carmelo Hayes and Braun Breaker have never fought before for the NXT Championship, and it is very likely whomever wins. Well, it's very likely whomever wins will be the NXT Champion, obviously, but whoever loses will likely make the move up to the main roster, because right after WrestleMania, or soon after WrestleMania, will be the next edition of the WWE Draft. So that is something that has to be kept in the back of people's minds, that it is very likely that some people will be making the move up to the main roster right after WrestleMania because of the draft returning, as the draft in the past couple of years had taken place in October, but last fall it was announced that the draft was moving to right after WrestleMania. Instead of taking place in October, it was taking place right after WrestleMania. So I think, and I think that the draft taking place then is a lot better than taking place in October. It makes a lot more sense to hit the refresh button right after WrestleMania. But I, for one, am looking forward to Carmelo Hayes and Braun Breaker colliding for the NXT Championship. I do think that if Braun Breaker wins, if by hook or by crook Braun Breaker wins at Stand and Deliver, then they need to seriously consider turning Braun Breaker heel to continue his title reign or his reign of terror on NXT, and it would help him to turn heel. But I think it is more likely that Carmelo Hayes finally gets the win and becomes NXT champion, being the one to defeat Braun Breaker for the NXT championship, and that would lead Braun to make the move up to the main roster. I know Braun Breaker has only been down at NXT for a short while compared to other people. You know, Braun hasn't been down there for 4, 5, 6 years. He's been down there for 2, maybe 3. But if anybody is ready to make the move up to the main roster, it would be the reigning NXT champion. Also, last night on NXT Roadblock, following the match with Miko Satomura, which Roxanne Perez retained her NXT championship, Roxanne Perez would collapse following the match, and very reminiscent of Shawn Michaels and his match with Owen Hart back in 1995. I don't really know what the cause of her collapse was, but it was they stretchered her out of the arena, and Shawn Michaels and Booker T both got up and checked on her. It was very reminiscent of when Shawn Michaels passed out during his match with Owen Hart. The only difference is it was during the match. It was after the match. With Shawn Michaels, it was during the match. I mean, if the idea of it was to get people's attention, I can tell you 100% it got people's attention, and it's making people want to watch NXT because that's an attention-grabbing segment, and it worked because people are behind Roxanne Perez, and it will build sympathy for Roxanne and get more people behind her because she, out of anyone on the WWE roster, she has the most potential to be a superstar and be somebody that WWE could build a division around for the next 10, 15, 20 years, especially considering the fact that she is still in her early 20s, which is certifiably insane. With that being said, though, that is it for the news cycle, and if you're not paying attention to NXT and the build-up to Stand and Deliver after last night, what are you doing? Because you definitely should. I would suggest watching the Roxanne Perez video. I would suggest watching Johnny Gargano's return to NXT. I would suggest watching the challenge between Braun Breaker and Carmelo Hayes. It was quite an episode of NXT Roadblock last night, and it's worth a second look. But now, the road to WrestleMania is in full swing because there are no more stops before April 1st, night 1 of WrestleMania, and April 1st, NXT, Stand and Deliver. There are no more stops on the WWE calendar before WrestleMania weekend. So let's get the car in third gear and zoom towards April 1st, because I don't know about you, but I'm ready for WrestleMania weekend. With that being said, though, I will see you in the next news video.